All right,
Okay, so we're ready to go?
I believe so.
Well, welcome you all to the Middleton City Hall. And it's 7 o'clock, and I'm going to call the meeting of Middleton Plan Commission for March 14th, 2023 to order. And the first item is the roll call. Abby.
Bruce,
Here.
Erdman Hermans,
Present.
Schaefer,
Here.
Slavish,
Here.
Harp. Harp, are you present? I think.
Present.
Yep. And Ramsey is absent this evening. Mayor Brar is present.
Okay, thank you, Abby. And the first item is the approval of the Plan Commission minutes of February 28th, 2023. Need motion to approve.
Schaefer moves. Slavish will second.
All right, any questions or comments? Abby did a great job. Everything looks good. So
I think
if there are
Mark
no
did the
questions or
minutes.
comments, all those in favor of the motion to approve the Plan Commission minutes of February 28th, 2023, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Chris? Did you hear from him?
I think he said aye.
He did?
Aye.
Okay, we had all ayes. So we are going to the item number 1. This is the presentation from Capital Area Regional Planning Commission Agency and the director Steve Steinhoff on regional. He's going to tell us about the regional development framework and related initiative. Steve, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Brar. And good evening, everyone. I'm really happy and excited to talk to you here again about the Regional Planning Commission. And primarily the Regional Development Framework. I talked to you last about a year and a half ago, August of 2021. And at that time, we were doing the circuit to tell people about the framework goals and strategies that we had come up with and getting feedback on them. And since then, we have adopted the plan as of June of last year. And we're focusing on how we're going to promote the implementation of that plan. And one of the ways to do that is by engaging with communities during the update of comprehensive plans. And so that's where you are. And so that's one of the reasons why I'm here. Next slide, please. So I'm, oh, look, I can look at it here.
Yeah.
Nice. So I'm going to quickly go through the regional development framework. It's something that you probably at least have some familiarity with since I presented it to you before, and I don't want to rehash things that you already know about, but I thought a refresher would be useful for setting the context. And I wanted to comment as I go along, make some comments about to what degree it's consistent with your current comprehensive plan. Then I will delve into sort of the trajectory that CARPC is on to help promote implementation of the framework, and then finish up with a couple of big picture more challenges I think we as a region face specific to implementing some portions of this framework. I do want to say that the framework itself and the adoption of it is a culmination of years of effort and involvement with a regional visioning process that Mayor Brar was part of, called Greater Madison Vision. So it involved visioning and stakeholder involvement, public participation, and regional planning to reach a fair degree of consensus about the goals and the objectives and the strategies for how we want to grow, how we want to manage the addition of 200,000 or so more people over the next few decades. It's like 2.5 sold out Camp Randall stadiums worth of people. So it's a significant amount of growth. I'm excited that we have achieved the level of consensus that we have. I think the conversations across the region with communities, high level of support for the goals and the strategies of the framework. I think this is fairly unprecedented in as far as a region, having achieved this level of consensus. Certainly hasn't happened for CARPC before, and I don't know if it even happened for a predecessor agency, the Dane County Regional Planning Commission. So this, I think, is a really is an unprecedented opportunity to build on that consensus. So with that, I will quickly go over some of the key the goals, objectives, and strategies. So coming out of the regional visioning process, we brought forward these three overarching goals: reducing greenhouse gas emissions and fostering community resilience to climate change, increasing access to jobs, housing, and services for all people, and conserving farmland, natural fiscal resources. I'm gonna have to shrink this cover up. There we go. And there are 11 objectives that relate to those three overarching goals, as you can see on this the table. I'm not going to go through them, but because in interest of time, but I do want to cover the 6 development strategies and the 3 development climate resilience development practices. So one is to prioritize growth in already developed areas. Also, as you probably know, as infill development or redevelopment, that we prepared a regional growth scenario, a model, computer model of how that 200,000 more people in the houses and the businesses and the public facilities, et cetera, could be added to the region. And on this map, you see in the light gray, the area that was in urban development as of 2020, and the darker gray, the additional urban development going forward over the next 3 decades. And you can see a fair amount of it is infill and redevelopment. So this is a policy and an approach that the city of Middleton has incorporated strongly in your comprehensive plan and in your development practices. We track the housing units that are added to the region since 2020. City of Middleton, of the housing units built in the city of Middleton, 78% have been as infill development. So highest percentage in the county. So you get an A on this strategy.
The way to go.
Abby said she likes to be graded. So
Yeah.
there you go.
Yes.
And we like to be compared to other communities too.
Let's see. Okay, the next strategy is to focus growth in centers and corridors. Centers being higher density activity areas with a mix of uses and a mix of housing types and a walkable format like a downtown, and corridors being the multimodal mixed use avenues, streets, corridors that connect those centers. So again, City of Middleton, it's your downtown redevelopment. You're planning, you have adopted or about to adopt a University Avenue corridor plan, which identifies, and you're already experiencing some of the infill and some of the center activity. Parmenter has emerged as a regional center, so high consistency there as well. Preserving stewardship areas, the next strategy. Stewardship areas are those areas, natural resources that are not legally protected from development, but yet provide important benefits for both as far as like habitat and flood resilience and quality of life. So expanding beyond the legally protected areas is a key strategy of the framework. And the City of Middleton's comprehensive plan has many goals and actions and strategies for preserving these types of important natural resources. Preserving long-term farming areas. You can see on this map, the areas in darker green. This is a conceptual map that shows broadly where farmland preservation plans, both at the county and town level, reflect areas for long-term farmland preservation, and they're beyond the sort of urban transition zones around cities and villages, designed to accommodate about 20 years of growth. City of Middleton's, your comprehensive plan identifies, I think accurately, that the role of a city or village primarily in this field area is to grow compactly and infill as a way of reducing the outward pressure, and as well as reaching, having cooperative intergovernmental relations with to promote work cooperatively with the rural areas around you. Another strategy is to plan complete neighborhoods. So these are, here you see the aerial view of a portion of Middleton Hills, neighborhoods that are more compact with a broad range of housing types, arranged on a walkable street pattern close to shopping and parks and natural areas. So now you both have experience with developing complete neighborhoods, and your comprehensive plan explicitly states that you will that you seek that all the new neighborhoods are done as complete neighborhoods. Plan areas for quality business growth. So really addressing in particular those target sectors that bring good paying, high quality jobs, information, communications technology, biotechnology, healthcare, advanced manufacturing, those types of sectors. So ensuring that we can accommodate the growth of those sectors in quality areas. So here's just a picture of part of your commercial growth area. And then, so those were the 6 growth strategies. And we have 3 development practice related development practices, encouraging tree preservation and planting. So increasing the tree canopy, encouraging practices that reduce stormwater runoff, especially green infrastructure to reduce the risk of flooding, and related to tree preservation and planting, also encouraging practices that reduce surface temperatures or the heat island effect. So these are more related to adaptation and climate resilience. And there are strategies and actions in your comprehensive plan that address these, particularly the stormwater runoff portion. So moving on to that's a quick overview of the strategies and some comments on how it relates to your comprehensive plan and your practices. So CARPC is not an implementer. We're not a regulatory agency. No, we are advisory under state statutes. Communities, Middleton and other municipalities throughout the region have the primary role in carrying out the strategies that I just reviewed. So we're on a journey as far as at CARPC to figure out how we can best partner with communities to promote implementation of these strategies. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, one way to do that is encouraging communities to incorporate them into your comprehensive plans to updates. Well, as you can see, the best way you could do that is by not taking them out of your existing comprehensive plan. So, and in another way I wanted to say that is that I think one way that you could play an important role, not just in the city of Middleton, but in the region, is by providing leadership and demonstrating how you're going about implementing these strategies and working with us to help spread that word and increase the capacity of other communities to do that. Because we're not, as we go around and talk to communities and officials, we're not encountering opposition to, as I mentioned, to the framework itself, but there's difficulties that communities face in carrying them out. So I wanted to really throw that out there. And an example of how you've done that in the past and how it's been effective is through the Dane County Housing Initiative, which you may be familiar with, which run through Dane County. They're now going through this regional housing strategy process. But over the course of the housing initiative, they brought communities together to share and learn, do peer learning from each other, and extending beyond Madison to communities throughout the region. The acceptance and and construction of more affordable housing, more workforce housing. Peer learning had a big role to play in that. And like Mike Davis played a great role in the Dane County Housing Initiative in communicating what Middleton was doing, which really does, communities learn really well, and it's effective to learn from your peers. So I think the regional housing, the regional development framework is another way you could do that. But going down this path of how we can best, learning how we can best work with communities to help implementation of the framework, promote implementation. We did what any good government agency did. We formed a committee called the Proactive Planning Committee. It has both commissioners and other local officials, including your own Randy Bruce. And thank you, Randy, for your participation and service
Yeah,
on that,
thank you, Randy. That's
on that
great.
committee. So they've met 5 times, and in fact, their 6th meeting was a joint meeting with the Regional Planning Commission just last week to review some of the key findings and recommendations. The overall charge of this committee is to recommend an ideal, proactive, collaborative planning process. And these are just the key highlights of the recommendations, the draft recommendations that are under consideration now. 1, do what we're doing right now, get involved with communities at the early stage of the planning process. CARPC's primary engagement historically with communities on land use and development issues has been during the urban service area amendment process. That's at the tail end after the planning decisions have already been made. And it's recognized that that's not the most effective way to help influence and promote policies and decisions regarding growth and development. As part of the fact finding of this committee work, we've had dozens of conversations with communities and stakeholders all across the region, and learning more and more, as well as our experience during the urban service area process, that cooperative intergovernmental future urban development planning can be key to achieving the type of future development that we want to see as in the framework, and to avoid the conflict farther down the road when proposals come forward that are not broadly supported or that generate opposition, which we sometimes see during the urban service area review process. And if people are fighting about a development proposal at that stage, it's really too late. And the water quality consistency review, which we do, is not the effective forum at addressing that type of conflict. We want this type of proactive planning to include us as a trusted partner and to be comprehensive and long-term focused, tied to the regional development frameworks, goals, and strategies. And one idea that's come out of this process is that if you go through this type of cooperative, intergovernmental, comprehensive, long-term focus, and you process and you develop a good future urban development plan, that could be the basis, serve as an amendment itself for an urban service area amendment. So that's something that I'm actually interested in hearing more from you during the Q&A part of this. So now I'm just going to wrap this up a little bit with 2 more big picture sort of gnarly challenges that we face with implementing the framework. And one is meeting the transportation, the region's transportation climate goal. So what you see on this pie chart, which is from the Dane County's Climate Action Plan, is showing the breakdown of the greenhouse gas emissions in our region, with transportation accounting for 29% of them, the second largest category. And to address that, the Climate Action Plan includes these goals. One is to reduce vehicle miles traveled, in other words, the amount people are driving, by the total vehicle miles traveled by 15% over 30 by 2050. And that's coupled with increased take up of electric vehicles. So here they have it here, 57% of sales in 2040 would be electric vehicles. And of course, increasingly powered by clean energy. So the plan is clear that we can't just switch all cars to EVs and meet our 2050 goals, that we also need to reduce our vehicle miles traveled. And that's going to be a difficult, that target of 15% vehicle miles traveled reduction is going to be a difficult one to achieve. So what you see on this graph is the blue bars show the total vehicle miles traveled per day in the blue bars. And then the green line is the per household daily vehicle miles traveled. And this is representing what would happen if we carried out those land use strategies in the regional development framework. So it doesn't include things like bus rapid transit or transportation facilities or policies. And it shows that we can reduce the household per house. We can get people to drive less by bringing them closer together and closer to destinations, et cetera, by about 10%, from 52 to 47 miles per household per day. But when you're adding 200,000 more people, and you can see from the blue line for 2050 total VMT, it's jumping up from 12 to 16 million miles a day, and which is significantly above you see the lower arrow there, right here, the climate action plan target. So how do we bring that down to the climate action plan target? Well, certainly through increased transit, the bus rapid transit, the new express bus routes, the redesign of the transit system, and hopefully expanding beyond BRT current boundaries to expand farther out into Middleton and Sun Prairie and Fitchburg and Verona, et cetera. But it also involves drastically increasing, for example, the bicycle network. The city of Middleton, by looking at eliminating your minimum parking requirements, is another type of strategy. Transportation demand management, where companies and employers work with employees to reduce commuting trips, and a whole range of both policies, infrastructure, and perhaps pricing mechanisms may be required to meet this climate target goal. So as you're looking at updating your comprehensive plan, you might want to consider thinking about this measure of vehicle miles traveled. It is both a performance measure of CARPC and the Greater Madison MPO. So that's something that communities more explicitly look at how they can help bring that VMT down through your own policies. Would be something to encourage you. And finally, I'll end with this planning complete neighborhoods. This, I think, the framework calls for a substantial increase in neighborhoods that are in development that is taking this form of that development that's happening in new development on the edge of communities, but it's not very easy to do, especially in smaller communities. It requires a significant chunk of land, like 100 acres. It requires a developer who has the expertise and the investment and the long-term ability to carry forward a development over decades. It can require municipalities who have the expertise, or at least the resources to hire the expertise to create these types of neighborhood plans. It can require the type of zoning rules that either encourage or require it. This is another area where I think, those of you who have some success with this strategy can help help communicate and help increase the capacity of other communities to do that. So that's my presentation. I wanted to just present these questions for your to open it up for any conversation. So how do you see proactive intergovernmental process for future urban growth working for Middleton? How can we meet our transportation climate goals of reducing total VMT? How can we make more complete neighborhoods? And what other challenges and opportunities do you see that I didn't cover?
Well, questions for Steve. Okay.
Yeah, a few comments.
Yes, go ahead, Mike.
Great presentation. I think it's great what CARPSI's done in terms of kind of laying out their priorities and strategies, which are really focused on green initiatives to a large extent, as well as locating folks near amenities and services, as well as managing urban sprawl to our green areas. And all of those strategies speak to greater density of housing along these corridors where transit might be served. And I'm curious, in the discussions that have taken place, for those of us who work in housing, in particular affordable workforce housing, as much as we like to think we are open-minded here in Dane County about the need for all these housing types, the NIMBYism is fierce. And how do you incentivize developers, municipalities for that matter, to promote more density, in particular in these corridors where you have access to transit and services? Because that's a real quandary that exists throughout Dane County. And some communities are much better at it than others in welcoming that, knowing that they need that type of housing in particular in their communities. Others, as we know, are not. And how is CARPSI handling that? What are you doing, or what could you do, to help promote, greater density? Because I think all those goals are dependent upon that.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that falls under what are the other challenges and opportunities that you see. And yes, that this issue of NIMBYism as a barrier comes up frequently when we go around the region and talk to communities, whether it be Sun Prairie or Cottage Grove or McFarland or Oregon, et cetera, et cetera. So it is a significant barrier. I think the Regional Housing Strategy Project will be coming up with strategies and action items that hopefully can help address this NIMBY question. And CARPSI can help by providing information and data about sometimes that can maybe from a external professional and objective source, maybe dispel some myths about affordable and workforce housing and myths about what it does to, what it does to property values. Well, the answer is it actually can help increase property values and, things like that. We can come and talk to during a meeting if that's helpful, to show that this is really part of what this proposal is not just for this community, but it's part of a regional approach to meeting our challenges. I could point out how all the infill and redevelopment is happening on the density that's happening throughout the region, not just in Middleton, but in Cross Plains, they have density going up. In Shorewood Hills, they have density going up. So it's not just it's not just targeting those the neighbors of one particular project or something. So those are some thoughts I have on that. But it is an ongoing.
No easy solutions.
No easy solution.
Bruce, you have something?
No, I don't. Nothing right now. No.
Okay. John, go ahead.
Just as sort of a comment, I'm thinking out loud. It's not really a question, but we keep talking about, trying to reduce car miles and density of housing and density of transportation. And I keep asking the question is, well, where do these people go? What do they need the transportation for? They need to get to a grocery store. They need to get to places where they can get sustainable things. And it came up at a forum a couple of weeks ago about, the city of Middleton, other than a specialty with with Lily Street, has literally just one grocery store. So we can build as many housing units and pack the density in, and we can create the bus transit. But if we don't somehow go beyond the fact that we're still reliant on developers who all want to come in and place a bunch of dense housing, how do we find the ability to carve out those places where we need to put things that people want to go to as opposed to be? I don't know what kind of thoughts come up on your committee about those issues.
I don't know that the committee got into that specific question, but
It's not really a question.
if you are growing more densely, even if you can't take a most people aren't gonna take the bus to go grocery shopping.
Sure.
But if you're closer in general to the destinations that you're seek, even if you're driving shorter distances. I think is generally we find is the case, what the data.
Well, I guess that's the crux is the where, if what we need to get to is closer or shorter distance, we cut the cars, but with the thing that we need to go to are the things we don't seem to be putting into this planning. We look at every housing unit that goes in and we talk about having some commercial, some retail, and we put in coffee shops here and put in a bakery here and a little hair cutting. But we sort of I don't see, at least in what we've done, this sort of sense of, look, we need some stores that are the things that people need to go to live. And maybe we need to be pushing harder for creating those pockets of the places where people need to go. So
I think you're right. And when you're trying to transition from an auto-dependent form of growth where commercial is presented primarily in regional scale commercial stores that their draw shed is 10 miles, then how do you transition from that to an urban form? And that's a key challenge, and hopefully we can address it. But I don't really have any answers.
sort of out there to make sure we think about those issues.
Yeah, retailers follow rooftops or units. I mean, that's just a fact.
Mhm.
And normally it's the units that come first. And if there's enough critical mass there, then retailers.
Yeah,
grocery
it's
stores,
part of the thing is that we're eating up all our space with the people that come first,
That's
and
true.
we're not
So,
leaving the space for the.
correct. Being
Yeah.
thoughtful about
Maybe
mixed
we need to
use.
be thinking about carving out piles of little retail centers or something.
Yeah, to your point, John, we've discussed this with our staff quite a bit because we've heard the same thing. It's, they follow the rooftops, especially grocery stores. Grocery stores in particular, they look at their market area and how many households they can serve within an area. And I've always thought the way to encourage those smaller scale ones, it may not be the most popular way, but it is to get away from the auto-oriented type of development where you have a big box store. Because if you think about it, if you have 1,000 residents, they can support X number of square footage of grocery stores. If you put all of those square footage of grocery stores that can be supported by your population on the edge of the city in an automobile-oriented development, it's going to be really hard to support the smaller scale ones. So we don't really, aside from Willie Street and we have Pick and Save, those are, I think, a little bit more integrated into neighborhoods where you can walk or bike to get there. And a lot of people do. We also have I would argue that the two hardware stores that we have in town, because they have a smaller footprint, we're able to support having two, and they're pretty well integrated and, they're reasonably spaced with.
It's happening when as I driving a school bus, I live in the Quick Trips. And I see more and more groceries in the Quick Trips. I see a lot of people coming out of Quick Trip, buying bananas, buying bread. They're going there to get groceries and not coffee.
Right.
And so I know it is serving, but it's just, I don't have an answer either, but I like the conversation.
Well, and maybe that's kind of part of the retrofit that we're starting to see is with the density of housing development. Quick Trip has seen, well, there's a market now for us to become that little, corner store that used to be very common in pre-automobile oriented land use patterns. So
Anyway, thank you for what you're doing.
Sure. And
Throwing
another
my dirt.
example of what Mike, you're saying about, and we're talking about rooftops and the groceries follow rooftops, is on East Washington and Madison. You see that Metro Market now, in the ground floor of a 14-story building. Now, not that you're going to probably be getting 14-story buildings along University Avenue, but it's an example of how the grocery stores do follow that level of density. So that's a store where I'm sure a higher percentage of people are walking and biking to that than, something on the edge of town for sure.
Yeah, we have tried to get a grocery store in Greenway Station for a while, and it just doesn't work. So we are still hoping, there's quite a bit density there. We think that it will support, but it doesn't look like anybody's biking there. So any question from Chris or Erdman Herman? Chris?
Nope, thank you for the presentation.
Yeah, again, great job. I have a question for you that when you look at the climate issue, that the most of the energy is coming from the electricity and then the transport and then other issues. So 37% or something. So in the pie chart.
Mhm.
So what are we, I mean, we got the solar for electricity, but wind a little bit, but that is a big challenge there, isn't it? So,
It is, yeah. Although solar is increasing, the cost of solar is competitive very competitive in the marketplace. And challenges of getting larger scale solar are, again, some NIMBY opposition to siting, the challenges of putting it on lots and lots of rooftops. CARPC is partnering with the Dane County Office of Energy and Climate Change to achieve a regional designation from the national group called SolSmart, where that awards that different gold, silver, bronze designation to either municipalities or regional entities that demonstrate they're being friendly to solar PV and taking steps to educate and encourage the development of more solar. So that's something that is currently underway. And part of the reason we're doing that is so that we can encourage municipalities like Middleton to also seek that designation. So,
we look at building tops. When I was in Germany last couple of years ago, parking lots covered in these things. Oh my God, the cars are in shade, so they don't heat up, and there's a space, and there's not depleting farmland. But yet, I never see anything.
Yeah, that's
like
puzzles.
that.
It seems like a no-brainer.
Yeah, I mean, you look at a mall parking lot.
Right. And it's easy to put the the infrastructure for the panels in, I would presume. A lot of them have lighting there already anyway. And
Yeah, put them a little higher, let people park their cars.
Mhm.
yeah, that's actually a good idea. Maybe even
Charging
Luxembourg. not
stations
just-
underneath them.
Yeah, it's a very good job.
Yeah, so there's a lot which we can do there. So, yeah. Well, this is great job. And I
Thank you,
guess
and great
there are
job,
no
City of
easy
Middleton.
solutions. And
Erdman Herman has her hand raised.
Herman, please go ahead.
Hi, I guess I just had some comments that I've been thinking about for a while on this topic of reducing automobile traffic and also the affordability. So this sort of combined problem that we have in Middleton of lacking affordable housing and being very dependent on cars. So I guess one question I have for the city developer planners would be, is somebody like Kelly Hillard in the sustainability department actively trying to attract drugstores, grocery stores, daycare into the areas where we want to add density and housing? Is that something the city can do, is actively try to help bring in the types of retail that we need in order to create walkable communities?
I would say that that's not generally an area that we have spent quite a bit of staff time on. Usually our involvement is incorporating the spaces into new developments and encouraging developments to be complete neighborhood where they have, they have that retail or service component, but we don't really have anyone on the city staff that would go and actively recruit, different businesses to the community. Now we have an economic development program, but that is generally geared toward like major employers and more large new buildings through TIF financing. So we don't really do that right now, Gretchen.
It seems like the problem of affordability with new build is going to be very restrictive for smaller retail that we want to attract in order to create these new areas to be more integrated and more walkable. I wonder if there would be some sort of way that we could be more active in talking to the types, it's a very targeted type of retail that we need to make a community walkable. What are the things you go to every day or every week,
Mhm.
right? It's the grocery store, the drugstore, the daycare if you've got kids. It's the dog park if you have a dog, right? So a couple of these things we can, maybe coax developers into making sure that there's a place for dogs to roam around a little bit or use the bathroom at least on their own development, to prevent some of the driving out to almost want a key to take their dog to a dog park. But the affordability for a small new retailer taking a huge risk to come into an area that's not quite built up yet or not fully, not at full capacity, it feels like maybe we could be targeting these types and saying, hey, these are the developments that are ongoing in Middleton. Would you consider coming to Middleton? Some sort of outreach or marketing on the city's part could be somewhat helpful to making these work. That was one comment that I've been thinking about. Yeah, and I guess the other one is just tied in. Yeah, it's the affordability piece. And I don't know how we get around that. Land is just becoming more expensive. Middleton is a great place to be. And with global warming, it's more of a great place to be. And yeah, I think that we're attracting a lot of businesses and a lot of people that want to have their houses here. But we are growing very, very laterally instead of vertically. And that doesn't help with the affordability piece. And so, yeah, I think it's going to be very hard to create walkable communities and reduce traffic when we have that. Another thing with developers, so I've noticed a trend where, with these infill spaces, the lots are smaller and there's not a lot of space for the parking. And maybe perhaps a bigger problem is that there's not a lot of space for delivery. And one way to reduce people one by one leaving their houses is if they increase their use of delivery service. That actually overall probably reduces cars on the road. And people are pretty happy to use Grubhub and delivery. And what I'm seeing is like not places for UPS and delivery drivers to park at some of these new infill locations. Well, now if they're parking in the bike path on the street and then bikes can't get around it, or they're over a sidewalk and pedestrians have to go out into the street to get around it, this is not really conducive to like the feeling of pedestrian friendly or non-car friendly transportation. So that's been a concern of mine with the developments that I've been seeing with infill too. Those are my comments.
Well, so Abby, those two new developments coming, the Red Tail Acres and the Bell Farm, those will be set up with complete developments, isn't it? So
Yeah, I think both of those developments would meet the definition that we've outlined in our comprehensive plan because they include a range of housing types and they have services that people can walk to. In particular, Bell Farm. I mean, that has more commercial space. They have restaurants. They had talked about including a small grocer within the development. So I think both of the new subdivisions that we have and Bishop's Bay, which is our other primary growth area, that has a commercial component as well. It just is anticipated to come later because again, you need the rooftops there to be able to support the retail component.
So we are, making an effort that new developments are complete neighborhoods. It just
But I
takes
hear
some time.
Gretchen's comment and I take it to heart and I like it, I think, but it means we need to always keep these in the front of our conversations.
Yep.
Yeah,
So every time we talk to developers, every time we look at one of these
Yeah.
projects, these aren't the afterthoughts. These are the things that put, and if the city and the commissions and everybody's talking it together,
Right.
then it becomes a little bit of a more forceful voice and people might listen a little bit.
Yeah, and a couple of the things that Gretchen mentioned, we do have quite a bit of control over. So that's making sure that people have walking access to public lands like parks and conservancies. That generally is under the city's purview. And then with dog parks, I know that the Plan Commission has recommended that developers include those into a couple recent projects. Market West is an example, in Greenway Station. I remember that the Plan Commission was really supportive of the dog park component being added to that project. So yeah, there are definitely some levers here within this commission, where we can be encouraging that. And I like the idea, that Gretchen mentioned about like thinking about the places that people go every day. So yeah, daycare, that's really important. The grocery store. I would be curious to hear if CARPSI has seen, or if you have data at this point that would show the impact that the pandemic has had on VMT, because I feel like most of the people in my age group are now doing remote work at least a couple of days a week. So it just seems like that has really transformed the number of daily trips that people are taking. And that seems like that could be a huge factor.
That's really more of the area of the MPO.
Yeah.
But what they've told us so far is that a lot of the trips, and a lot of the miles have bounced back from before. That people are certainly driving less to work, but they're no longer stopping on the way home, from to and from work to do they're making additional trips instead to go do those other things. So there's still a challenge there.
Or they might still have kids that they have to get to daycare so that they can
Exactly,
do
right.
their remote work in peace.
And work trips were always not the minority of all trips anyway. So I wanted to, I've been very negligent in not introducing Carol Terrell, who's commissioner on CARPSI, who came to support this presentation. And I don't know if you have any comments you want to add. She's an appointee from the Dane County Executive.
Carol, anything to say?
Not really.
You can come over there, so. Thank you for coming. Really appreciate that.
I'm glad to see you all. One of the things that was mentioned, but I just wanted to stress it because we're having this very interesting discussion here. There are a number of organizations that are focusing on encouraging the different kinds of development, and partnerships with them would relieve the necessity for you to have a staff person doing it. And as was mentioned, having these discussions, I think you were the person who was leading this, in the context of like the MADREP, and also the things that the university is doing that is really related, I don't know if they think about it this way, to the growth of the local communities. They have a lot of effort in those areas, reaching out to the sort of sidekicks of the degrees that they're focusing on. So maybe we just need to have a brain session of coming up with who might be the people who could do some of this for the communities. And if there's a consensus about some of those drivers for driving, that might be something that hadn't really been thought of by the university. Or I know MADREP has thought of it because I've been in discussions with them on that. But there are a lot of other parties out there. And it's not just government to government, although that is obviously very important. But these other governmental and semi-governmental organizations maybe want to be part of the discussion. But at least we could be encouraging by reaching out to them. And I think one of the thoughts that you might have been talking about, Mr. Schaefer, on your comment that you made quite a while ago, was making sure that land is still available in the community where you are focusing your growth, land available for the latecomer developments. And that's a real challenge. in
Started
Madison.
targeting those spaces before some other developer comes and says, oh, here's an opportunity.
Yeah.
Let's,
Well, my experience on being on the Madison Plan Commission for a long time was that you really don't have that opportunity. But, you know, if you can identify it as a problem or an opportunity for someone to play a role, maybe we can come up with some collective braining to come up with some collective strategies. So, and it's really encouraging. And I know that Steve told you about this, the amount of outreach that has gone into the ground level of what is it that the communities want? What is it that communities themselves need to have assistance on? That's really shaped an awful lot of the strategies that CARPC has come up with. And of course, Mr. Bruce has been very helped a lot with the proactive planning assistance area.
Excellent ideas, Carol. It's bringing various parties together, you know, rather than having, you know, all trying to do themselves. It will make a huge difference. So I think, so that is really a good idea. And there's so much happening at the university. I mean, you know, they got, you know, various groups, even in the university working there, may not know what else is happening. So I think tapping into some of those, that is really great idea and a challenge as well. But it will, in the long run, if we can do this, that will make a big difference. Like UW Extension, they do a lot of things. So, you know, see if there's anything where we could tap into it. So
I appreciate the proactive statement of position, because as the plan commission of the city, we tend to be reactive. You know, we sit here and wait for a developer to come in with a plan, and then we react to that thing rather than going out and say, let's play Sim City and let's think this through before it comes.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you for the invitation.
and the CARPC is doing a great job. It's, you know, sort of breaking those silos. So, you know, so it's going to various communities, what Steve is doing. So Steve, I have a question for you that, you know, we all know the plants sequester carbon, and you mentioned about the canopy. Why aren't we planting or finding ways to plant more trees? I mean, you know, it will take a while, but unless you begin, you know, even by tree canopy, you can tell whether this neighborhood is rich or poor. And we should have, anyway, so that is, you mentioned there when you were starting it. So, but, you know, I don't see a whole lot of focus. My background in plants, you know, it's, I think having more trees is really important. So I don't know when you go through your planning steps, you know, if anything which you could do in that direction.
Well, CARPC is partnering with Dane County, again, the Office of Energy and Climate Change, as well as other municipalities and other organizations for recently established regional tree canopy collaborative or tree canopy working group that is tackling this issue and working to develop, you know, recommendations and policies and share practices. And because we have lost our tree canopy, we've lost a lot of trees in the last 15 years or so, significant, you know, loss, emerald ash borer and other reasons. But as you stated, trees are hugely beneficial. You know, not only do they absorb carbon dioxide and capture it in the form of pulp, but they help buildings cool themselves better and provide habitat, and property values increase. You know, the list goes on and on. It's like, I agree. Like, why aren't we doing more of this? It seems like such a no-brainer.
Steve, I was just going to add, because one of the things that I really enjoyed about our recent meeting with your staff was learning about the data dashboard that your team is working on and not quite ready to fully go live. It's
live.
it's live
It's a
online.
beta version.
Okay, thank you. But one of the things about that dashboard, I mean, it has a lot of really wonderful information. It's really cool to be able to scroll around and see everything that you've displayed and how it ties into the indicators in the regional development plan and how you can also show progress over time. But one of the maps in there is the tree canopy map, right? So you can actually see like how we compare overall to other communities and where we have areas within our community where we might want to focus our efforts to plant more trees. So that's just one of many, many things that's included in the data dashboard that CARPC staff is maintaining.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Abby. I didn't include that in my presentation because of time constraints, but yeah.
It's a really, really fun tool. Our staff has really enjoyed playing around with it.
You bring out your inner data nerd and delve into it.
Well, other questions
Yeah,
for
just
Steve from.
One more comment.
Yeah, go ahead.
Mayor Breyer, just before we close out, I just wanted to say how impressed I was with RPC and their staff, and actually the knowledge of the other people on the committee was kind of mind blowing, to tell you the truth. And I've been in the development community for over 30 years, and I didn't really realize how valuable that resource was. And I hope that we're able to lean on them as much as we can, and hope that RPC can continue to work with communities around here just to lend their expertise and help guide development.
Thank you.
And like, as Steve, you said early on, you brought all the communities together, putting together a plan for 2050. That was great job.
Yeah.
John, you had something to add?
No, I didn't know. Thank you.
Anything from Chris or Erdman Herman? Otherwise, let's give him a big hand. Great job, Steve. Thank you.
Middleton.
Let's keep on doing this great work. Really appreciate it. Okay, this was no action is required on that one, and we move on to item number 2. This is the specific implementation plan modification for X-Golf patio addition 1620 Deming Way. And Daphne.
Yes, I believe Brent said he was coming. I don't know if he's on the call. Oh,
Hi.
yeah. Hi, Brent. Yes. So this is going in the outside of X Golf in Greenway Station. It's down here in the corner. I can zoom in a little bit more. But they had originally applied for a sidewalk cafe permit because it was going in the sidewalk, but we realized that this area where they're putting it is actually owned by Greenway Station because it's a PDD. So we changed it from a sidewalk cafe permit to just the SIP modification. And then this area that's outlined in green, they're going to be filling in with concrete. And there's just one comment from our public works director that said there's like a light pole around this corner where that circle is. And they would just want, to avoid that light pole in case they need to switch it out and everything. And I believe Brent found a solution to that as well. So yeah, we are just recommending approval as an SIP modification.
So definitely, I saw that there is a flower bed. They're filling that up with concrete. So
Yes, yeah.
So why do they need to do that?
So that's in order to create enough sidewalk space for other people to pass around. So they're putting a patio in, and so in order for people to be able to walk around that patio space, they're filling in that planter area.
But only small part of it.
Right. I
Okay,
believe it's
okay.
only that portion that's in front of
Okay.
the patio.
Okay.
They'll be leaving where that light pole is and the rest of that corner.
I mean, that doesn't concern me in the fact that we looked at this before
Yes.
and we made comments and pushed more
Yeah,
green growth out into the
yeah,
parking
yeah,
area.
yeah.
So
I
they've
mean,
already done a lot.
you don't
so
want
yeah,
more
yeah,
concrete
I
there, so.
don't see an issue.
Well, any questions for Daphne here?
Looks good to me.
Okay, Chris or Herman, she has her hand up.
Council.
I don't think she
Oh, okay.
does. I don't know why that's showing
Okay.
there because we're having the same issue. It's not showing up with a hand
Okay,
raised on
okay.
mine.
I do not have my hand raised.
Okay, any
I'm
other?
sure they'll put some flowers on the tables and maybe a planter box and it will look amazing. And I'm really glad that there's more sidewalk cafes because I think we desperately need those.
Okay, well, then need a motion to approve.
Bruce will make that motion.
Okay, I will go ahead and second it.
Okay.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor of the motion to approve the specific implementation plan modification for X golf patio addition on 1620 Diamond Way, say aye.
Aye.
I
Anyone opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Well, we really don't have anything more here unless anyone else has. We need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Slavish will second.
Okay, any questions or comments? All those in favor of the motion to adjourn, say aye.
I
Anyone opposed? Motion passes. So, well, you are ready for dinner or late dinner or whatever. So.
So Abby, off the record, when that hand, I noticed when Gretchen put up her hand, then the hand